I made this icon back in about 2010, and I was recently sharing it with a group of my students as an example of how you can design a new icon, trying to bring together the insights and traditions of both East and West. This was for the theme of the Sacred Heart. Now, quite often icons of the Sacred Heart tend to be a sort of pastiche between a Pantocrator and a Western image of Christ holding a heart above his breast. What I've tried to do here is to actually evolve an icon from the theology of the Sacred Heart. The commissioner asked specifically for the insights of Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit priest in the 20th century, to be the basis, the foundation for the design. At the time, we published my thoughts about the design on a blog, and my students were thinking that it would be interesting to share this with a wider audience. So I'm going to read now what I wrote several years ago, and you can see what you think. Christ sits enthroned in the midst of the cosmos, symbolized by the circular nimbus, divinity which has no beginning or end point, in a square, the created delineated order with a beginning and an end. The final layer of the nimbus is an octagon, symbolizing the 8th day of the new creation. In the center of the nimbus is a swirling rhythmic shape of fire. Christ's Sacred Heart sits at the center of the geometric shapes and is encircled with the Greek letter omega. Around the edges of the composition we have the created order, spiritual and corporal, gathered together as one in the process of transfiguration at the Parousia, a time of transformation of the old order in the new heaven and the new earth. In the lower register we have a stylized vine, for Christ is the true vine, of which we are the branches, with leaves and fruit entwined with fantastical creatures, to the left animals and to the right fish. The vine recalls the Eucharistic life, both a foretaste of the life to come, but also as an actual participation in the transfiguring new life which is offered to all humanity in Christ, through his body the Church, whereby he draws all people to himself. The animals represent the earth, the fish, the sea. Entwined on the left is Adam prostrating himself, representing the whole of humanity in need of redemption, the weary and heavy of heart whom Christ bids come to him, while to the right we have St. Mary Magdalene, who is commended for desiring the one thing necessary, the woman who, forgiven much, loves much, and who stood at the foot of the cross alongside the Mother of God and St. John. So thus represents the new man in Christ, those whose hearts have been transfigured by divine love and who witness to that love, even in this present age, as a foretaste of the consummation of all things in the New Jerusalem, when Christ the bridegroom will take the bride to himself. Crowning the vine is the Mother of God and St. John the Baptist, in a deesis of supplication and prayer, honouring the Son as is manifested as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, as he glorifies his Father through his passion. She is, as it were, the flowering of grace, the beautiful woman clothed in the sun, the Immaculate Mother, who is all for and in Christ, whose transfiguration in death at the Assumption was a foretaste of the new life which is for all those who welcome her Son. John, meanwhile, heralds the one who is to come, manifesting the transition from the old covenant to the new, a witness to the evolution of salvation history, where Christ must increase and all others decrease. At the Lord's feet gushes forth 7 springs of life-giving water, just as water gushed forth from the temple in the vision of Ezekiel, the waters of life that water the earth with sweet water, that brings the barren trees to bloom and the desert to spring forth, the waters of grace and new life that are the treasure of the Church. This is also representative of the gift of drink which Christ promises in the book of Revelation to those who are thirsty. Above all of these are the supernatural or spiritual powers, what St. Paul calls the powers, dominions, authorities, angels, archangels, etc. To the right we have the angel carrying a measuring line from the book of Revelation, Revelation 21:15, measuring out the new creation, principally the New Jerusalem. This reminds us of the profound order within creation, which will continue and be fulfilled in the new one. On the left is one of the seraphim, a being of fire and flame, which traditionally is understood to have the purpose of fanning the flames of the love of God into a bright furnace whose heat permeates the whole of creation. The visions and reflections on the Sacred Heart speak powerfully of this energy of love, and in this teaching of the Church about these spiritual beings, we have, I think, an important connection between the later devotion and its roots deep in the patristic and biblical theology of the Church from the earliest times. The archangels Michael and Gabriel hold the exalted cross, which crowns the composition, behind which the sun and moon are set against a map of gravitational energy emanating from the planets and stars, which are being rolled up to make way for the new heavens and the new earth. In the visions of the Sacred Heart, it is surmounted by the cross, so the whole icon is here with the exalted cross. The cross touches into the depth of the darkness of God's mystery while reaching out into the heavens, displayed between the portents of the sun and moon. The heavens here are as a scroll being rolled up, and the pattern behind is drawn from one of the latest imaging of gravitational energy. Modern science has enabled us to perceive far more of the wonders of the universe than ever before in the history of the world, and maybe even of the cosmos as a whole. There are invisible forces at work, all within the marvellous order of creation, and all of which has its ultimate fulfilment in Christ. Thus we find Christ's heart as the culmination point for the whole of creation, both temporal and spiritual, a process with both an end or omega point, but which is also evolving through time as the energy of God's love, which first created, then redeemed, and will finally consummate all things, bringing all things into unity in the person of Christ, who not only entered into creation, but entered into death, giving himself completely, beseeching all humanity to come to him who is meek and gentle of heart, so that they might be refreshed. Jesus is placed within a nimbus which represents the manifestation of his divinity, moving from a dark, unknowable centre to a bright circumference. The circumference billows with cloud forms representing the heavens, which manifest the glory of God in its beauty and order. At the centre is the Sacred Heart itself, surrounded by its own mandorla, within which is inscribed the Omega, denoting Christ's Sacred Heart as the Omega point, as explored by Teilhard de Chardin.